Hello, and welcome to another geopolitical analysis video. Please like, subscribe, and share the video posted below. Saeed Nasrallah, Secretary General of the Hezbollah party, in July 2019 denied all Israeli allegations.
أنفي نفيا قاطعا ادعاء المندوب الإسرائيلي في مجلس الأمن أن حزب الله يستخدم مرفأ بيروت لنقل سلاح أو مكونات سلاح إلى لبنان. وبكل صدق أنفي. إذا كان في شيء منه أنا بسكت وما بنفي. ما في داعي أقول عم ننفي، يمكن نسكت مثلا، لكن أنا أنفي. لكن هذا يأتي في سياق أقول لكم هذه مقدمات لفرض وصاية يريد البعض أن يصل إليها في لبنان، وصاية على المرفأ ووصاية على المطار ووصاية على الحدود، وما عجزوا في أحد أهداف عدوان تموز أن يحققوه وهو المجيء بقوات متعددة الجنسيات إلى المرفأ وإلى المطار وإلى الحدود. قد تكون مقدمات في هذا الموضوع. كمان يجب أن يكون هناك مسؤولية وطنية لبنانية ما يدخل هذا الموضوع بالمزايدات، لأنه في حدا له مشكلة مع حزب الله يقوم يعرض مرفأ بيروت للمخاطر. أنا بكل صدق وبكل شجاعة ووضوح ولا أحتاج إلى أن نقسم يمينا أن مرفأ بيروت غير صحيح.
The clip you're about to watch was released last year responding to Saeed Nasrallah. Israeli IDF Chief of General Staff is warning governments like Lebanon and Syria of hosting terrorist groups, which as a result, Israel will have to attack even if there are areas around civilian presence.
במלחמה הבאה אנחנו נתקוף בעוצמה את המרחב האורבני. האויב הוא שבחר להתמקם שם. כשאנחנו אומרים שם, זה לא רק שהוא בחר להתמקם שם, אלא שמשם הוא יורה אלפי טילים ורקטות על אזרחי מדינת ישראל. משימתנו לעצור את זה. ההבדל בינינו לבין אויבינו זה שבניגוד לו, שעושה הכל כדי לתקוף אזרחים, אנחנו, בהתבסס על מודיעין טוב, על יכולות תקיפה טובות, על תמרון איכותי, נתקוף באופן שמבוסס מודיעין, והמודיעין שלנו מתפתח וגדל מיום ליום. אבל אנחנו נתקוף בעוצמה. אנחנו נתקוף בעוצמה מכיוון שאין דרך אחרת לעצור את האיום הזה, הכל כך מסוכן, את תופעת הטילים והרקטות על עם ישראל. אני אומר יותר מזה. אנחנו נזהיר את האוכלוסייה שחיה שם בצד השני. אנחנו נאפשר לה להתפנות. מיד אחר כך אנחנו נתקוף בעוצמה ונתקוף גם את התשתיות של המדינה המאפשרת. כל מה שתומך טרור, כל מה שמאפשר לטרור להתקיים, לפעול ולפגע נגדנו, חשמל, דלק, צירים, אנחנו נתקוף. תדע המדינה שמארחת את ארגון הטרור, שמאפשרת לארגון הטרור, או שאפילו מעודדת את ארגון הטרור הזה, תדע שהיא נושאת באחריות. האחריות היא של ממשלת לבנון, האחריות היא של חמאס, האחריות היא של סוריה, ואני לא רוצה למנות את כל שאר.
The horrific explosion in Beirut was the size of a small nuclear bomb, leaving at least 137 people dead and a further 5,000 wounded. 300,000 are left homeless, and the damage is estimated up to $5 billion. Multiple events leading up to this tragic event can be traced within the geopolitical relationship of Syria and Lebanon, and, of course, the systemic factor which involves the Middle East. The Syrian crisis warped neighbor Lebanon as it restarted the sectarian confrontations between the Sunnis and the Shiites with the Alawites. Almost automatically, the Syrian crisis spread to the Lebanese political religious space. The sectarian confrontations in Lebanon restarted in the city of Tripoli and the Bekaa Valley, both of which have a close proximity to Syria and consist of mixed religious composition. Tripoli has a close proximity not only to Syria, but especially to major armed spots between the Syrian regime forces and the Free Syrian Army forces. The city is dominated by Sunni, and its surrounding areas have been a logistics support center for the Syrian opposition. Small community adjoined of Alawites and Sunni neighborhoods has been in a state of low-intensity conflict since May 2012. The Alawite Party in Tripoli, known as the Arab Democratic Party, is also believed to have been receiving funds and arms from the Syrian Alawite regime of Bashar al-Assad. The arrest in May of 2012 of anti-Assad Sunni activist Shadi al-Moulawi by the pro-Hezbollah General Security Directorate (GSD), and a few weeks later, the killing of a prominent anti-Assad Sunni cleric Sheikh Ahmad Abdul Wahid in the northern region of Akkar by the Lebanese armed forces led to the start of the sectarian clashes in Tripoli. This is where the Syrian civil war is reenacted in a microscale between the anti-Assad Sunnis of Tripoli and the pro-Assad Alawites of the city. Tens of people have been killed from both sides in a confrontation that has at times involved heavier weaponry. The Lebanese army has been deployed in Tripoli and has often engaged against militiamen of both sides. The Bekaa Valley has also seen early sparks of sectarian violence, though not to the extent that Tripoli has. The Bekaa, traditionally the main transit route of legal and illegal activity, has become a transit point and logistical base for the Free Syrian Army. This has created friction between the adjoining Sunni and Shiite towns and villages, which resulted to sporadic violence and a number of abductions. Reports from journalists refer to training camps within the Sunni-controlled areas of the Bekaa organizing training for Sunni fighters destined for the Syrian war. In the midst of August 2012, violence spread also to the capital Beirut, when members of the powerful Shiite Meghdad clan of Bekaa Valley abducted more than 40 Syrian nationals, as well as a Turkish citizen, and held them in Dayi, the Hezbollah-controlled southern suburb of Beirut. The mass abduction was a retaliation for the abduction of Shiites in Syria by the opposition forces of the Free Syrian Army. The radicalization of certain Sunni segments within Lebanon follow the increasing religious radicalization of parts of the Syrian opposition. Reports from the field indicate that as the Syrian conflict becomes longer and even more violent, the number of Salafi and Sunni Wahhabi jihadi groups are drawn into the combat operation increases. In consequence to the increase of radical Islamic elements in Syria, increasing the radical Sunni Islamic elements within Lebanon as well. This is particularly evident in Tripoli, which has a long history of Islamic radicalism, as well as close historical connections with the Syrian Muslim Brotherhood, Ikhwan al-Islamiyya. In fact, the Islamic organization Harakat al-Tawhid al-Islami, also known as Islamic Unity Movement, had transformed Tripoli into an Islamic emirate from 1983 to 1985. The more recent major incident of Sunni Islamic radicalism in Tripoli was a takeover of part of the Palestinian camp of Nair el-Barid by the organization Fatah al-Islam in 2007 and its confrontation with the Lebanese army. But this was an isolated event, instigated by an obscure jihadi organization with opaque roots and funding. Since the eruption of the Syrian crisis, Tripoli has been experiencing a renewed wave of Sunni Islamic radicalism, which is closely associated with the increased radicalism across the border in Syria. One Salafi cleric in Tripoli compared in a recent interview the North Lebanese city with the Pakistani frontier city of Peshawar, for the role that it has played in providing support and fighters to the Islamic resistance in Afghanistan against the Soviets. The same, argued the cleric, happens now in Tripoli against the Assad regime. One other reason for the radicalization of Sunni elements in Lebanon is a political void that has been created during the last 2 years at the high echelons of Sunni political power. In the most high-profile case, Saad Hariri has been recently living in Geneva due to a series of assassination threats against him. This void is enhanced by the fragmentation of the Sunni leadership. particularly expressed in the political and economic competition between the Hariri family and the Mikati circle. This void has given the opportunity to move activist and radical elements to emerge to the forefront. These elements utilize the rising sectarianism of the Syrian crisis in order to achieve higher mobilization of followers and supporters in Lebanon. The most characteristic cases are those of Sheikh Ahmad al-Azir in Sidon and the Imam Salim in Rafai in Tripoli. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you got an understanding of the chronology of events that warped Lebanon's balance due to the neighboring crisis in Syria. Please follow me on my next analysis on the greater picture of the Middle East and the Syrian and Lebanon relationship after the unfortunate and horrific explosion in Beirut. I'd also like to share my condolences and send my prayers to the people of Lebanon. Good luck. Thanks for watching.